Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be working with a little tiny piece of Tennessee U.S. History 78 that I didn't cover in a previous video, the impact of Sputnik, which is going to lead to the space race. So we're going to deal with that dominance for power in space that happens in the 1950s and 60s. Um, the Soviets shocked the world on October 4th, 1957, when they launched Sputnik into orbit. Sputnik is a satellite. It becomes the first man-made object to orbit the Earth. And basically what it could do is it could send and receive radio signals, which means it could over any country that it was going over, it could basically absorb and store and reflect back to the Soviet Union any radio signals that were going over. So any type of broadcast that was being made. Um, it made one orbit every 96 minutes, and it emitted a radio signal for 22 days, which means that every 96 minutes, the Americans knew that above their heads there was this communist satellite that was spying on them, and there was literally nothing we could do to stop it. And that's going to freak out the Americans, and it will launch the space race. Um, November 3rd, 1957, the Soviets beat us again, y'all, when they put the first living thing into orbit of the Earth. It was Laika the dog. Now, the dog does not come back alive. Okay, so they beat us. They're the first ones to put a living thing in orbit. And we are bound and determined to not let them win anymore. So this launches the space race, which is the Soviet and the United States racing to obtain dominance in space. And America is basically giving money to NASA at this point. They're just take my money, just take it, make something. And the reason why is because if we can get rockets, then we should be able to take the same propulsion system and put it on a nuke, and then that we would be able to nuke each other easier because we wouldn't need planes. We wouldn't actually have to put the bomb on a plane and fly it. You could just use, they're called ICBMs today, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and you should be able to just take that nuclear bomb that has a missile on it, basically, and just shoot it to the other country from one continent to the other. Um, and that's the whole goal of this, y'all. It wasn't for, science. Although for the people making them, I'm sure it was science. And we cannot be beaten again. So we rush and we slap something together so that we can put something in space. December 6th, 1957, we tried to launch Vanguard, which was our first attempt at a satellite. And it literally blows up in our faces. The rocket exploded when we tried to launch it. This is a humiliating failure. The Soviets are, obviously laughing at us for this. We really don't know what to do. So we gotta pull it together and keep going. And then we do get a success. January 31st, 1958, we launched Explorer 1. This is the first U.S. successful satellite launch. And now it's the Soviets worried about our satellites over their heads. Then we beat the Soviets. Yay! We finally beat them at something. January 31st, 1961, we sent Ham the chimpanzee into space. He survived the initial launch, and we know that because we had him complete a couple of tasks. He was taught to press buttons, basically. And what that did was send signals back to Earth so we knew he was alive. So we could prove that he was alive when he was in space. After a 16-minute flight, the gravity of Earth pulled his shuttle back in, and he survived re-entry, which means the Americans had found a way to launch a living thing into space and then bring it back alive. So you need to know Ham the chimpanzee as the first living thing to ever come back to Earth from space. Plus, come on, he's really cute. Okay. And then the Soviets beat us again, y'all. They put a human in space and bring him back alive. Okay. April 12th, 1961, aboard the Vostok 1. Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin, or Gagarin. It's Russian. I don't know how to pronounce it. He's going to spend 89 minutes orbiting the planet. Okay, so he is in space for 89 minutes. And we are so mad that they beat us because we were so close. They did this on April 12th. We did it on May 5th. Okay, that's how close we were to beating them. Aboard the Freedom 7. Alan Shepard is our first astronaut, our first man to go to space. He is a hero to all little boys and girls who want to be astronauts. He's only going to be in space for 15 minutes, but we do manage to get him in space and back alive. Excuse me. All right, so this is going to launch. We've now both have people in space. Where do we go from here now? What next? And what we end up with is the race for the moon. Okay, on September 2nd, 1962, JFK, President Kennedy, challenges the United States to put a man on the moon before the end of the decade. And I'm going to show you this speech in class because it's amazing. But he is going to, challenge NASA to do whatever they have to do to get a human being on the moon. And we did it by like that much. We had 7 years and a couple of months, and it took us almost a full 7 years to do it. July 16th through 24th, 1969, we had Americans on the moon. Apollo 11 was the shuttle that took them there. And Neil Armstrong becomes the first American to ever set foot on the moon. He does this on July 21st, 1969. And the reason why the Soviets were able to beat us for so long was because they had a better education system than we did. In America, we tended to focus on reading and writing, on being literate, because that was a sign that you were educated. We also had the literacy test and stuff like that. So reading and writing were really important to us. Whereas in the Soviet Union, they focused on math and science, which means they had a better science program than we did. Also, say what you want about the Soviets, but they are all about equality in education, which means the Soviets had the best minds, male and female, working for them. Because the men and women were both given the same education through the school systems. Whereas a lot of times, especially in America, young girls were encouraged to marry soon after high school. Still in the 1960s, most women, if they went to college, it was assumed they went to college as kind of a hunting ground for a husband. It wasn't assumed that they were going to college to get a degree, to get a career. It was they were going to college to meet a man who was going to have a better job. Okay. So the Cold War is what really causes America to start to emphasize math and science in our school system, because the Soviets had beaten us and we didn't want them to be able to do that again. And that is it.